Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning into the Football Goons podcast as we get set to preview week 8 of NFL action. It's been a wild first few weeks of the season, and we're expecting it to continue as we near the halfway point of the season. We'll kind of let that one slide under the radar. I have to say it just for logistics, but we want to pretend like we're not almost halfway done. We'll break down the entire week ahead in every aspect for you here, fantasy football wise, NFL wise, to get you best prepared to set a lineup this week. Right out of the gate here, I want to ask a fun question just because, in the world of sports here, we have a lot of like newer facilities and we also have a lot of classic facilities. And I was thinking about this today, Monday Night Football in Atlanta, brand new, facility, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Tomorrow night, the World Series is going to kick off. You're going to alternate between Fenway and Dodger Stadium. So my question is, bucket list type things, what is the one place you most want to see a sporting event at that you haven't already?
This is 100% easy. I will view my life as incomplete if I never get to do this. I want to go to Notre Dame Stadium.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to say Lambeau Field. I was going to jump.
No. I want to go to Notre Dame Stadium.
Both? Both terrible.
Yeah, you're crazy.
Oh, Notre Dame Stadium would be sweet, man. I hate them too, but that'd be awesome.
Dude, you can't talk trash on Notre Dame Stadium. You just can't. Like, just the atmosphere alone, like being with 100,000 people. I know a lot of college stadiums have that, so you can't just use that as an excuse. But like the history and the background around there, like if you're sitting high enough, being able to look out and see Touchdown Jesus in the background, like I want all of it. I want to be there for a home game. I want them to win, and I want to be standing in the stands while they sing the Notre Dame alma mater at the end of the game. Like everything, I want it all.
Yeah, mine's actually close to that. I don't really care where it is, to be honest. I mean, I am a Georgia fan, but not like I'm gonna die if I never see Georgia in Sanford Stadium. But I want to go to a major Division I college football rivalry game. Like, I don't care where it is. I mean, obviously the close one for me would be to go see Penn State, Ohio State. That would be sweet. Like, going to the Big House would be awesome. I want to go somewhere where there's 100,000+ people in a rivalry game. That would be great, because I love an NFL game with 67,000. Like, I'm adding an extra half of that stadium. I just think that'd be awesome. I mean, I actually missed out on an opportunity to go to the whiteout Penn State, Ohio State game a couple weeks ago, which really makes me sad. But I just think that's an opportunity I think I'm going to get someday, and I'm going to love that. That's a bucket list one for me. I don't care where, just one of the major ones. Like, I don't want to go to the Rutgers game.
Come on.
That's not I don't want to go see
High Point
Rutgers
Solution
now.
Stadium?
No, I'm all set. I'm good there. It's scary to me that you know the name of Rutgers Stadium.
Big Ten guy. I'm a Big Ten guy. So.
I guess.
They have it right on the turf too, for what it's worth. So, for me, I'm old school in this regard. Like, I love seeing those classic places. A couple years ago, got to take in Fenway, which was amazing. So for me, I have not been to Wrigley Field.
I knew you were going to say that.
I need to see a game at Wrigley Field. I have to at some point. So I fully expect to make that happen coming up here in the next couple of years. So that's a big one for me. But I also agree with Miles to an extent here. Like, the college football atmospheres, like with the tradition, like think about Clemson at night, Death Valley, the way they come down, the side of the hill there, like just a ton of great traditions. So, I mean, that would be pretty cool too, as well. So
I think it would be awesome if the three of us got to go to the game, like go to Michigan, Ohio State in Michigan. I think that would be so much fun.
It's hard enough watching that game in South's living room when he's so miserable they lose. I'm not flying to Ann Arbor to watch Ohio State beat Michigan.
You watch how you talk about the number 5 ranked Wolverines, okay? Georgia, you just enjoy the view from behind right now, okay? I don't know how long it'll last, but I'm going to get it in while I can.
Well, both of you guys should be looking up at me for at least the next 5 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, because what do you play, like School for the Deaf?
Yep. Yeah. Hey, you do not speak poorly about the School for the Deaf.
Yes, and then after that, they finished the season with Johnson Technical Institute. So, All right. All right. Let's talk
Johnson Institute out of Alberta, Canada.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about some fantasy football here. It's waiver time. All right. We're going to look at some popular waiver players this week, some names that are popping up a lot. I don't have the usual claimed data at this point because we have moved nights, in case you haven't noticed here, live during Monday Night Football with a little bit of a watch along here. So I don't know the guys who are getting a ton of claims put on them at this point yet, but we do know based on, what we're kind of expecting this week, ownership percentage. So Marshawn Lynch is going to now be put on IR. So he could miss up to 8 weeks now. We initially thought it could have been up to 4. Seems more like a hernia kind of situation. He may need to have surgery on that. So I would expect that for the bulk of the remainder of the season, he is gone. I listed Jalen Richard just because he's the more popular name at this point. But between Jalen Richard, 20% owned, Doug Martin, I don't quite have the percentage in front of me, even DeAndre Washington, who's even less than Jalen Richard. Is there a back there in that situation that you feel like is worth, a dart throw at this point?
I guess sure, in PPR settings, Richard is probably the guy. I mean, he comes in the negative game script situations, which I fully expect the Raiders to be in a lot of.
Yeah, they're going to play behind a little
for the remainder of the year. That said, I'm not so sure Doug Martin isn't the guy to grab. But that said, I'm not overly interested unless you're super desperate. I mean, you might be the guy. I was talking to a guy earlier today who lost Sony Michel and lost Melvin Gordon and lost Marshawn Lynch this past week.
Was that you? Were you talking to yourself?
No, it was not. But nonetheless, there are people who are desperate. If you have that unlucky injury bug, a lot of people have it once. But if you have all the guys that got hit this week, then sure, I would probably go Doug Martin because I think he'll get more touches. But I don't really want to be in the situation as a whole.
Yeah, do yourself a favor and just ignore all of the Raiders now. Jared Cook, that's it. Like, I'm okay with not owning a single Raider other than Jared Cook. And that's going to be scary because they don't have anything on the outside to help open up the middle. So the Raiders are going to be a bad team. They're going to be playing from behind a lot. So I like Richard over Martin if you're in a pinch, but I hope you don't have to go there.
Yeah, I like Richard basically for the fact that he's going to score a ton of garbage points. So if you're in a pinch and you need a quick play, you're in a PPR, half PPR, you're probably going to get 10 to 15 points out of him because he's going to catch like 7 passes for 6 yards. So, might sneak into the end zone if they get lucky. Somebody's going to have to score a touchdown if they score. In general, most NFL teams end up scoring. So, you would figure that he'd be in line for some of that action. But I think actually like first, second down, I think DeAndre Washington is going to kind of come on over the next couple of weeks, believe it or not, because Doug Martin has never done anything aside from 1 year to really take ownership of any backfield situation. And I can't believe now that on a team that's less motivated than it was last week to be any good, that Doug Martin is going to be inspired to, put his best foot forward or even be able to really do it at this point. So, just something worth watching to me, but ultimately I think Jalen Richard is the play. Another running back here. This one, if you could believe it, is actually less savory than the last topic. Chris Ivory is currently owned at 7%. Michelle McCoy is in the concussion protocol. He doesn't miss a ton of games, but you'd have to expect that based on the fact that he was so quickly ruled out last week, he may miss this week. Ivory had 106 total yards last week, didn't find the end zone, but is Chris Ivory a guy who you could sneak in here for a week and get production out of?
I don't want to do it, but probably. I mean, that's probably an even worse offensive situation minus Shady, than the Raiders. They have no wide receivers to speak of. They don't have a tight end. I mean, Ivory is your best hope of getting any kind of yards. I mean, they've shown the ability to force the football in the run game. They have no desire to try and air it out because, I mean, they picked up Derek Anderson off the couch last week. So what did you think was going to happen? But, I mean, not that I want to own Ivory, but he's got nobody behind him that's really going to push him for carries. So you're at least getting top back production, not production, but top back carries at least.
Yeah, I think he's a good one. If Shady misses, this is a moot point if McCoy doesn't miss the game. But again, kind of like I said on the last guy with all the injury stuff, you could also be a Tevin Coleman and Melvin Gordon owner, and they're both on bye this week. So as a 1 week fill-in, I actually probably prefer this to grabbing a Raider, even though the Raiders have more long-term viability. I don't know which one to grab for this week. If McCoy misses, Ivory's, you got to fire him up this week.
Yep.
Yeah, just worth watching too. Like, he did kind of ding up his ankle a little bit toward the end of last week's game. I think he mostly, didn't come back in because it was such an ugly game. So worth monitoring here going through the week. But they're going to play the Patriots this weekend. They're going to want to try and get some kind of ball control. I don't know how well it's going to work, but I would expect them to stick to and commit to the running game. So, and as Rocco said, the volume is his. There's nobody else in that backfield that is going to stop him from getting upwards of 20 carries this week. So, definitely worth monitoring if you need a plug and play situation here. All right, let's talk about wide receiver Tre'Quan Smith of the Saints. He tied for their target lead this past weekend against the Ravens. Ted Ginn, obviously done for this season. Their tight end use has been minimal this season. So other than Michael Thomas, the backs, targets have to go somewhere in a high volume offense. So Tre'Quan Smith, what are you feeling about him moving forward?
I think something we learned Sunday is he's definitely the guy over Cam Meredith. I think that was, a big one last week, people battling, who do you want? Meredith had no targets. And I know it's one game sample size, but at the same time, that's what we have to go on here. My bigger worry here for Tre'Quan Smith is that I'm a little concerned the Saints are going to go back to last year's game plans. Ever since Mark Ingram's been back, Drew Brees has 29 and 30 attempts. Well, he had no fewer than 32 in the Saints' first 4 games, and 2 of those were 45 plus. So I'm a little nervous with Ingram back. We're going to get back to last year, where everyone who owned a piece of the Saints passing game was a little disappointed in the results.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. That's definitely worth monitoring. I think it's pretty telling that in the last 2 weeks, now they blew out the Redskins. So, take what you want from that. But the Redskins are still a top team in the NFC right now. Whether or not we feel like that's sustainable, we could talk about later. And then against Baltimore in a dogfight, quite honestly, he was targeted 6 times. So the trust is there. You would have expected maybe Cam Meredith to be more involved. So I think this is one of those things that as the year goes on, you're going to start to see his target count go up a little bit more as Drew Brees becomes a little more comfortable with him. We've seen in the past that, once Brees finds these other targets in the passing game that he likes, he really sticks with them. So he's got 9 targets the last 2 weeks, 6 catches, 155 yards and 2 touchdowns in 2, tougher opponents. Again, they blew out the Redskins, but I think he needs to be owned. If he's available, I think you should consider owning him unless you really just don't have the roster space. All right, let's talk about Raheem Mostert, 16% owned. He's got 2 straight weeks of at least 79 yards in the 49ers offense. Do you think that this is a situation where Kyle Shanahan really wants to employ a 2-back system and we're going to continue to see production out of both guys? Or do you think this is more of a product of Matt Breida just being banged up?
I think, until Kyle Shanahan shows us otherwise, he always has had a 2-back system. That's been his thing. And we said that would work really well this year with like a Breida, Jerick McKinnon combination. And obviously, we lost out on being able to see that with McKinnon's injury. But I don't think, Matt Breida has been pretty good in what he's been asked to do up to this point. And yet we're still seeing other guys get touches, other guys be involved. I think that's just how Kyle Shanahan does things. And it's not a shame to own both of these backs or at least roster both of them.
Yeah, I agree. I actually, Breida's been good. You're right, but he's struggling to stay healthy. He had the ankle and then he re-aggravated it just this past week. I'm actually, Mostert's making so much of his opportunities. I'm actually more interested in him than the Richard or Ivory that we already talked about. I think of the running backs we've talked about, this is the one I'm most intrigued by because, listen, none of us are looking at the Niners offense right now like they're the Chiefs or the Rams, but they are better than the Raiders or Bills. So even in kind of a timeshare here, I like what Mostert's been doing more than the lack of guarantee in Oakland or the one game fix in Buffalo. So of the guys we've talked about, this would be the one I'd really target the most.
And important to note, and I think it's important to note, you don't have Jimmy Garoppolo running the show. You have CJ Beathard. So like teams are coming in knowing what they're going to do, knowing how they're going to run their offense. You're not going to get the same kind of gameplay out of Beathard that we're getting out of Jimmy or anyone else for that matter. You're basically working with a third string quarterback, and they're still being productive on offense. I mean, that's very telling to me.
Well, I get what you're saying there, and I think part of the reason why you're still getting a productive offense is for as many shortcomings as Beathard has, he's not afraid to sling it. Like,
no.
Watching him try to make some of these throws, like he doesn't have the arm talent that some other guys have, but he also doesn't have the fear to try and stick it in and make some big time throws. Now, more often than not in his situation, it's probably going to end up poor, but I think his willingness to just go for it, that's what's keeping their offense productive at this point. Mostert is appealing to me based on this. Against Green Bay, 7.25 yards per carry. Last week against the Rams, 8.5 yards per carry. So small sample sizes, only 19 carries the last 2 weeks, but something to be said there for the fact that, when he gets an opportunity, he's making the most out of every touch. So coaching staffs are going to see that and continue to give him opportunities. So, all right, let's talk about Tyrell Williams of the Chargers here. This is an interesting one because he's got 2 straight weeks where he's over 100 yards and has a touchdown. But is he too big play dependent at this point?
He is for me. I mean, I think we did the same thing last year. He had 2 back-to-back weeks, like towards like the middle to the close to the end of the season. We were talking about him on our podcast. Everybody was like, "Oh, we got to roster him," and then he went like 3 straight weeks, basically getting blanked. You know what I mean? So I think it's all about the big play for him. And luckily, he plays in an offense that can develop big plays. But I'm still not ready to put him in a lineup each week and bet on it.
Yeah, I know we as a group really focus a lot more on season long, but he's a great daily play for me.
Yeah.
You're going tournament hunting. He's going to be cheap. Even with those numbers, there's no way his price is going to approach 7,000. Because he's still a season high of 5 targets. These 2 weeks we're talking about 4 targets and 4 targets. He's cashing in, which is great for you as a daily player. As a season long, I'm a little nervous trying to take a loss with this guy. But if their job is to throw $9 and try to make $1 million, I'm not that crushed if he falls apart. Yeah. Now, if I'm 3-4 right now and I need a win to stay alive, I'm nervous putting him in there. So I do agree he's a little too big play dependent for me to play in seasonal, but I definitely love him in daily. I mean, I'm all over that.
What if you're 1-5?
Now, see, I don't have that concern at all.
Oh,
so why don't you fill us in on 1-5?
I mean, I only have that concern in one league, so
one of one, right?
Well, 1 of 2.
I gotcha.
No, listen, like you hit the nail on the head. I love Tyrell Williams in like a FanDuel DraftKings settings, especially this year with what FanDuel's doing. I admittedly don't play DraftKings a lot, but FanDuel in their weekly million game, like they're throwing all these different things in. Whoever has the longest touchdown this week, whoever rostered them on their team will split, $50,000 or whatever. Situations like that, I'm all in on him because he's a candidate for that basically every offensive snap in that offense. So other than that, I'm not that interested in season long quite yet. All right, one more name here that's interesting. Basically because the Dolphins receivers are a total mash unit. Danny Amendola, he's only 10% owned. He's got 18 targets the past 2 weeks as he's kind of getting more familiar with the system, a little bit healthier here. Albert Wilson, we're expecting he may go on IR for the season. Kenny Stills went down with a hamstring injury. Devontae Parker is what he is. They're talking about trying to get like a 7th rounder for him. So what appeal do you have, or what appeal does Danny Amendola have to a season-long team?
I hate myself, but it's a ton. It's a ton of appeal.
Yeah.
I mean, Danny Amendola is like Mr. Not my guy, but Osweiler loves him. And like you said, the Dolphins receiving core is just dying.
Yep.
They're going to throw the ball. Someone has to catch it. What, Rocco?
Did you just say Brock Osweiler loves him? Like that's something that we should be looking forward to? Like at any moment, Brock Osweiler could become Brock Osweiler, and we could, and that could.
Whoa!
Makes no sense.
He's not been Brock Osweiler, and Amendola's getting hit and putting up numbers.
Yeah, I mean he's still filling the stat sheet.
I don't want Osweiler quarterbacking my real team or my fantasy team, but nonetheless, a quarterback's clear-cut number one target. I mean, how many times has South said or anybody said volume is king? Well, we talk about it with the running backs, and we want a guy like Saquon Barkley. We want Todd Gurley because they're getting volume. Well, we're talking about a waiver wire guy who's getting 9 targets a game right now. And it's not like Tyrell Williams, 50-yard targets downfield. There's 6-yard passes. Even Brock Osweiler's hitting most of those.
Yeah,
I just can't trust Brock at all.
I don't trust him either.
Well, I don't trust him. I don't
bit.
trust him to hit 6-yard passes. Like I just don't.
Look, okay. The theme of the year has been, what are we actually seeing? You're not watching. If you don't trust that, you're not watching. I know it's a 2-game sample size, and that's why I'm talking about spending like 0% of your fab on Danny Amendola.
Right.
But if he's out there and to be had, you could do a lot worse. A lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, since Osweiler has come into play, 80% completions granted on 5 attempts, 64%, 71%, 380 yards, 239 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2 picks. Look, we know the total collapse could come at any time, but I feel like Adam Gase has done a nice enough job just kind of avoiding the risk with Brock Osweiler and getting into risk management mode. That's why I think Amendola is so appealing, because he's running all of those shorter and intermediate routes where he's going to get an opportunity to just make a catch and just create a couple yards after he gets the ball in his hand in a low risk situation. So in a PPR, half PPR setting, I mean, it's going to be tough to beat that volume, especially over the next couple of weeks where 4 teams at a clip are on a bye. All right, let's take a second here and talk about our friends at Gorb. Listen, if you have not checked out Gorb yet, and that's GHORBH, you can check them out at gorb.com, GHORBH.com. You're missing out, all right, because this is the time of the year when the weather's changing. You want to be comfortable. You want to feel good. You want to look good. For those of you watching live on YouTube right now, you could see that Miles has the Gorb hockey style hoodie going right now. It's so comfortable. It's so stylish. It's got that nice hockey lace, so it's not riding up and getting all up into your neck beard. For those of us that have neck beard, it's just stylish, comfortable clothes, and it gives you a constant reminder about Gorb's message, which is get hungry or be hungry. And that's all about finding out what you're passionate about, what fuels you, what you want to go after, and just going after it full speed ahead so that you're not going to end up being hungry in the future and wishing that you would have. Check them out at gorb.com today for all kinds of t-shirts, long sleeve, short sleeve, hoodies, all kinds of styles, colors, designs. It's all great stuff. It's all comfortable. And we do not just say that. We wear it regularly and we enjoy it. Gorb.com. All right. So you mentioned Saquon Barkley in the last segment here. I think it's important to mention that we kind of switch things up here to Monday night for those of you who are just listening after the fact. So in the future, if you want to jump on 8:30 Monday nights with us, you could do a live watch along, turn down the volume on Monday night, turn up the Goons, get your fantasy football preview ahead of anybody else in your leagues, get to jump on the next week and not have to listen to these clowns in the booth. But for what it's worth, I think Saquon Barkley set a new NFL record in the first quarter. He caught 150 swing passes for 1 yard each. Yeah. So at least that's what I have seen out of the corner of my eye. So
South, what's worse for you, watching Jason Whitman play or listening to Jason Whitman do these broadcasts?
oh, it's the broadcast by a lot. Like by the time that like I don't know, like there's something about him on the field, like you knew he wasn't gonna like kill you. I don't know. In the booth, it's bad.
And for everyone listening, that's an inside joke. Rocco knows his name is Whitman.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
We refer to him as Jason Whitman, mostly to drive South's wife insane.
Absolutely insane.
I made the mistake. Basically, the long story short, I made the mistake one time of admitting that I had a lot of respect for the way that he played the game.
No, hold up. You made the mistake one time of marrying a Cowboys fan.
Burn!
I mean, it wasn't a mistake of who I married.
No.
So, you know, I'm okay with that.
She made the mistake a lot of times of being a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, it is what it is. But so I made, that little gaffe where I admitted that just because, like, I guess he was a Man of the Year nominee or something. And then she would always have to tell everybody how I admitted that he was a stand-up guy. And I'd be like, who, Whitman? Never heard of her. So I had to kind of play it back. But all right, let's talk about some streamer options here. We've got 4 teams on a bye this week. So we're going to look at some streaming options. Some of these might be guys who are on benches. Some of them might be guys who are available, as a free agent you might be thinking about picking up for this. We're going to talk about some of the candidates for streaming this week because I feel like this is the situation and the time frame that we're in at this time of the year. Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott, Phillip Rivers, Marcus Mariota, all on bye this week. So if you have to stream a quarterback, what's your best option this week among these popular choices? Announced today that it'll be Blake Bortles against the Eagles, Mitchell Trubisky against the Jets, Baker Mayfield against the Steelers, or CJ Beathard against the Cardinals.
I have some Matt Ryan. I have some Phillip Rivers. I have personally reached out for Baker Mayfield against the Steelers in a couple leagues. I like that one. I do like Trubisky too, mostly because he seems to be very Bortlesy with racking up fantasy points despite not actually playing very well. So,
Bortlesy.
He has that Bortles-esque quality to him. Personally, it would be Baker for me. He had what appeared to be a so-so game, and he went over 20 fantasy points this past week. So I like that against the Steelers secondary. I like it with the fact that that game should be a chase situation for the Browns in Pittsburgh. So keep an eye on weather, I suppose, but I like Baker this week out of the options given.
I like Baker, but it's tough to put him on the road in that rivalry for the first time because he didn't get to take part in that in week 1. So I don't know how. Listen, he's definitely not the guy that usually would scare me because he seems like he's up for every challenge. But I'm going to hit you with a little bit of CJ Beathard. After watching him play with the Packers last week, Sal said he's not afraid to take these deep shots, and he's going against a very poor Cardinals defense right now. Guys are saying they don't want to be there. They want to be traded. It's a team whose defense especially is really in turmoil with a quarterback who doesn't mind taking shots. And Marcus Goodwin has proved against the Packers that there's not a lot of people that can hang with him. So I'll take a couple of deep shot touchdowns. I'll take, that Kyle Shanahan offense, against a poor Arizona defense and get some bonus points from a guy like Beathard.
Yeah, especially if Pat Pete does get traded. So keep an eye on that. It's already a very shaky at best pass defense, and you lose Patrick Peterson.
Forget about it.
Yeah. I'm going with Mitchell Trubisky here, and only for this reason. Like, look, it scares me a little bit that the Jets defense has been really good to this point. But at the same time, like, they are susceptible to some big plays. So what do the Bears do just about as good as anybody else right now? Create some big plays, some broken plays. Even for when Trubisky does turn the ball over, he makes 2 or 3 other plays that make up for it fantasy-wise. He didn't have a great game on paper, stat-wise, whatever, through 3 quarters against New England. But then all of a sudden he had a big 4th quarter. And all of a sudden, you're looking at a guy who's got a big fantasy week for you. So he did have 2 turnovers. I would expect them to cut back a little bit on that. They're not really going to be able to run the ball as effectively as they want to this week, I don't think. So I would expect him to air it out quite a bit. He threw the ball 50 times last week. You know, I think he gets 2 touchdowns this week. And when you're looking at a streamer option, you know, that's about as good as you could hope for, is to get 2 scores out of him. So I do like Mayfield. I agree with Rocco. You put him into a situation where the Steelers are coming off of a bye. They're going to play at home. That's always a real ugly game for whatever it's worth, turnovers and everything. I don't know. Maybe it's just the little part of me that still thinks like it's still the Browns. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a hater. Although I do hope that he plants a Browns flag at midfield at Heinz Field. That would be hilarious.
Oh, God, that'd be so great.
All right. So we got some prime running backs on bye this week, with Zeke Elliott, Melvin Gordon, Deion Lewis. Yeah, I said prime for Deion Lewis just because I wanted to get a reaction out of Rocco. Which deeper plays here? And these are guys who probably are stashed at the back end of a bench or maybe going to be claimed this week. Are you most interested in a pinch here? And I'm going to split this first one up because you can give me either or. Wendell Smallwood or Corey Clement against the Jags, Philip Lindsay versus the Chiefs, Chris Carson versus the Lions, or Peyton Barber versus the Bengals.
I want Lindsay versus the Chiefs. I mean, of this group, he's been the most consistent of these guys throughout the course of the whole season, and 2, the Chiefs' defense is awful. They're not good. I mean, they had a good game last night against the Bengals, but you could tell very quickly that the Bengals basically just gave up midway through the second quarter, essentially. So I'll take Lindsay against the Chiefs because of consistency and an awful defense.
Yeah, I like Lindsay as well, but I'll hit you. I mean, especially if Royce Freeman sits. Let's put it that way. But I think ultimately I'd land on Chris Carson here. Let's not forget the guy had back-to-back 100-yard performances before the Seahawks just destroyed Oakland, and they were ahead so much they got Rashad Penny involved. That's how far ahead they were. So I expect this Detroit game to be a lot more competitive here with Seattle, and therefore I think Carson's going to go back to his feature role in the offense. My only concern there is that they did use the bye week to get Rashad Penny a little bit more invested in the playbook. Whatever's been holding him back, I don't know. I'm not in the room, but I'd stick with Carson. I mean, Kenyon Drake's been struggling all year, and he hit Detroit up for 72 yards and a touchdown, 4 for 15 through the air. So I expect a guy who's been playing better all year in Chris Carson to beat those numbers.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there to an extent, but I am a sucker for Rashad Penny. I still think that, eventually, he is going to be kind of the cream that rises to the top there in that situation. So I'm going to go as well with Philip Lindsay just because that Chiefs matchup is still pretty tasty. They are susceptible to these more versatile backs. And I do think that, he is going to be the guy this week. I think Freeman's probably, going to get some rest or from everything that I'm hearing, they're not going to really rush him back because Philip Lindsay has been so productive, when given these opportunities. So it's a good matchup. I know that, the Bengals didn't exploit it enough with Joe Mixon, which is just head scratching, but I would expect that the Broncos will be smart enough to go ahead and exploit that matchup. All right, wide receiver tends to be a lot deeper of a position, a little bit easier to fill during bye weeks. But if you are looking for a streaming option this week with Keenan Allen, Julio Jones, a bunch of others on bye, who's your best play? Tyler Lockett versus the Lions, Antonio Callaway versus the Steelers, Willie Snead IV versus Panthers, or Kelvin Benjamin versus the Patriots?
I wrote no thanks. I did.
That's against the rules.
Well, I'm fudging the rules because I want to, and I have the microphone, and you will listen to every word I have to say. So I'm going with no thanks.
This escalated quickly.
But as far as low owned guys, because I know that's what you're trying to do, and obviously you're not going to list all 30 waiver wire options, especially at wide receiver. So what I would probably do, as opposed to any of the 4 names you gave me, is grab either Packer. They're both under 50% owned in Randall Cobb and Geronimo Allison right now. should they get clean reports of health. Or if not, I like Christian Kirk sitting there. He's 26% owned. He's got San Francisco this week. He's becoming a major part of that offense. He has been for several weeks. I like Christian Kirk too, more than the guys you listed. If I had to pick a guy you listed, I'm probably going to go with Tyler Lockett because he has the best track record this season, but I'm not thrilled about it.
Yeah, and in fairness to the question, these are more so, guys who are less likely to be on an active roster if you're looking for somebody. So
Sure.
I'm going to agree, though. I'm going with Tyler Lockett. The Lions have played better this year defensively, but I do think there's something to be said for a guy who has good chemistry right now with Russell Wilson. They had the bye to go ahead and get themselves healthy, kind of get themselves a little situated, get themselves prepared for this game. I'm going with Tyler Lockett, although I will say Antonio Callaway is a close second because I think he's going to get a ton of targets.
Callaway was the guy I picked.
He's not doing jack.
He's going to get targets. They're playing against a bad team. I like Baker to try and hit him deep. They're playing against a bad secondary. I mean,
no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm sorry. We're rarely going to mention this, but Austin Hooper just made a huge play this Monday night game. About a 40-yard catch, Moss and some guy. So, anyways, continue about your being incorrect with Antonio Callaway, please.
Honestly, I think Antonio Callaway is more likely to score a touchdown this week. That's just my opinion. I think you can get that deep ball touchdown against the Steelers. I don't have a problem with Baker trying to air it out. Especially if it's a closer game and he's trying to make a play happen. I trust that more than I trust Lockett to get in the end zone.
That's totally fair. And a lot of times you find yourself in these situations with names that like every one of them makes you vomit in your mouth a little bit.
Yeah.
You just have to ask yourself, who could score?
How often do we talk about that? Like, especially when we're talking about wide receivers, like which guy's most likely to score this week?
You know who can't score? Julio Jones, because now Marvin Hall.
I thought it was Dante Hall.
No, Marvin Hall is catching dimes 47 yards out from Matt Ryan. So the comical situation kind of continues there. But all right, let's talk about some trends that we see going on here and some random NFL stuff as well.
I just want to make note of how far behind I am. I just saw the Hooper catch. We're streaming at different speeds here, I think.
Heck, dude, up in upstate New York, you should be happy this game's even televised.
You probably got to go out and shovel the snow off of your dish on October 22nd.
Speaking of Alberta, Canada.
Yeah.
Speaking of, we got snow yesterday.
All right. So for the rest of the season, who do you rank higher and why? Kerryon Johnson or Marlon Mack?
This is Kerryon Johnson 100% for me. I love the game Marlon just had against what's actually been a pretty decently tough Bills defense against the run. I think he continues similar things, but I think Kerryon Johnson's the better player. And the way the Lions offensive line run blocks brings me to tears. Like there's video being released on Twitter, just highlight plays of Frank Ragnow driving 310-pound defensive tackles 10 yards into the dirt. Like they want to run the ball so much. And then on top of that, Kerryon runs so hard. I just love what they bring to the table. So I like Mac. I don't want my 100% guarantee to be held against him. It's that I think Kerryon's a top 15 back the rest of the way, hands down.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, as a nerd for line of scrimmage type guys and a former offensive lineman, I watched that Frank Ragnow video and had the reaction like Homer Simpson does to a cheeseburger. I was just drooling. Yeah. I mean, it was just a thing of beauty. So, look, you could make the argument that he may get vultured at the goal line from time to time. I think that's going to slowly start to phase itself out. LeGarrette Blount, he is what he is at this point. Like I feel like we talk about this every year now, where eventually, like he's just, that heavy hammer type guy for a young guy who's coming up. But Kerryon Johnson can get it done in every phase of the game, and you're going to start to see that more and more. I picked him for Rookie of the Year. I figured that he was going to get an earlier jump than he has, So, but I expect that for the rest of the way, he's going to be the guy. The the touch count just keeps increasing over LeGarrette Blount. Even in goal to go situations, you're going to see that.
I know part of fantasy is having the ability to foresee things changing and sense that. But I'm going to stick with Mac here because I am afraid of the vulturing of LeGarrette Blount. I mean, we just saw it yesterday. Like, Carrion did all the work and LeGarrette put it in from the one. Like that's the kind of stuff that I hate. Mac, although I think there are more packs in that Indianapolis offense, they continued to prove when Mac was out that they couldn't get the job done. And the 2 weeks that Mac's been there, he's looked good. They lost to the Jets. I get that. But Mac looked decent in that game, and then he looked great against Buffalo. So I'm going to go with Mac going forward. I think it's actually a safer bet in terms of not having the touches vultured from him, and also the ability of not the ability, because I think Carrion's a better player than Mac is, but I like the opportunities that Mac's going to get more than I like Carrion's.
I think just to respond to it, Marlon Mack has just the same vulture. It's just Andrew Luck. He threw 4 touchdowns on 23 attempts. Like that's. He is a touchdown vulture. They threw the ball 20.
Matthew Stafford times. Can be that guy also.
Yeah, right. I'm just saying we're looking at the touchdown vulture in kind of the more regular way, the more classic way. The Colts have one too. It's Eric Ebron. Like it's just a different. Frank Reich. They're going to throw the ball.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, the last 2 weeks, when they've made it a point to get Kerryon Johnson more involved, Matthew Stafford's attempts 26 and 22 pass attempts. Like, what would it have taken for me to get you to believe those attempt numbers from the Lions and Matthew Stafford, this time last year? So, could be a philosophical change. We'll see. All right, give me one player who has already cemented a spot as a first-round pick next year who was not a first-round pick this year. Let's exclude, injuries and holdouts. I don't want to hear Lev Bell went 14th this year and he's going to go 3rd next year.
Yeah, there's only one answer to this. It has to be James Conner. I mean, I can get people might think Thielen is receiver 1 or whatever. I just don't see any way Lev Bell is back. And fine if you think that, but the guarantee in every league to be first-round picks are running backs. So I don't see any way Lev Bell's back. And Connor's a big chunk of the reason why they're going to feature him. They always have a great top 5 running back in Pittsburgh. They have one right now in James Conner. He'll definitely be a first-round pick next year.
Yeah, I actually agree, and I'm only jumping in because I agree. I thought it would be another name would be the more obvious one, and that I would be alone on James Conner. So I'm actually surprised that somebody else said it. I figured Adil's not here tonight. He's feeling under the weather, but I figured if somebody else went this route, it would be him. But you hit the nail on the head. They always have a high producing running back. Even going back to like Jerome Bettis, Willie Parker, fast Willie Parker, Lev Bell. Like they're always
a year or two was a beast.
Yeah. It's always the case with the Steelers, so they were
making
to it.
Verron Haynes probably fantasy relevant back in the day. So now I wanted to say Thielen bad, but there's no way he's going to go above AB and Julio. So you got a number 3 wide receiver at best. I say at best, I mean he's been phenomenal this year. You can't take anything away from him. But a number 3 wide receiver is not a guarantee for a first-round pick unless you're in like a 12-team league. So I went with Conner also. I am curious though, South, who was the other guy that you were thinking about?
I figured most people would just say Saquon because technically
he was a first-round pick this year.
The data shows that he was kind of outside. I mean,
then him.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. If we're not counting him as a first round pick, I look at it in terms of our league. Like Saquon went like 5th.
Yeah.
So, I think another name to throw out there, especially if he has a really good second half, I could see Joe Mixon squeaking up in the back half of the first round if he puts up good numbers. I know you guys are mad at him after last night, but if he has a phenomenal second half, we could be talking about him as a late first round pick next year.
I just feel like they're not committed to like really using their running backs. That's all that it could be at this point. Honestly, it just doesn't make any sense. But that's an argument for a different time. All right. So through 8 weeks, several coaching hot seams have seemed to become red hot at this point. So which coach do you imagine will be the first one fired this season?
I'll say I don't think anybody's getting fired in season this year. But I don't see any way, unless they turn it around in a big way, I don't see how Hugh Jackson survives. I mean, it's a miracle he survived 1-31 the last 2 years. And now they've given him the number 1 overall quarterback. And, they're better, but they were supposed to challenge for wild card this year, 7-9. And you're sitting here at 2-4-1, which, is better than 0-16, and it's better than 1-15. But when you're supposed to be a competitive team now, coaching's a big reason you win or lose close games. You've been in overtime 4 times, and they have not won 3 of those. So I just don't see, unless, and they do have the talent to make a turnaround, but he's costing them games, in my opinion.
I mean, it's tough. It's tough to overlook the early issues with the kicking game. The first 2 weeks would have been wins if they had a kicker. So I mean, that definitely is in his favor. But the simple fact that you're allowing yourself to even be in that situation is on you, and it's been on you for the last 3 years. He's not good. I'm gonna hit you with Todd Bowles. I think Todd Bowles will be out after the season. The more I'm watching it, the more you're seeing just mishandled situations. And you finally have what looks to be like your quarterback. I mean, yes, he's got hiccups here and there, but you at least know that you can be pretty set with Darnold going forward. You don't have to address that again. And I think they're going to get him a coach that's, from this decade, from this era of football, because Bowles is not it. Too much clock mismanagement, too much playing it safe. I think he's going to be out.
I really do think we're approaching a time where defensive coordinator is going to be the ceiling for defensive-minded guys. Teams are just better when they have offensive-minded coaches in today's NFL.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with Hugh Jackson. It just seems like he has no control at all. Like, 1 minute he's going to take complete control or get a lot more involved in the offense, and then the next day, once he realizes that Todd Haley's ticked off at him, and that's the kind of crazy person that you don't want to have ticked off at you, he says, well, I actually didn't really mean that. Like, get some control of the situation. Yeah, I think that's the most telling part now. So I think that's the obvious one. But
not to mention the fact that there's been rumblings around the NFL that he's not playing the guys that Dorsey wants him to play. And I mean, the quickest way to get fired is to piss off your general manager. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Todd Gurley is on pace right now for 32 touchdowns, which would be the single season rushing touchdown record. So predict the number that you think he actually finishes at.
38.
Come on.
No, I actually said he'll fall short. I expect a touchdown regression in the second half. But seriously, because listen, they're going to get to the point where these games are not going to mean as much. They're going to have things locked up. He's not going to play 16 full games, So I think he'll wind up around 28.
The Rams still have games against the Packers, Saints, Chiefs, and Eagles, which all on paper should be shootouts. They have shown no desire to get him out of games until 3-4 minutes left in the game and they're up 30. He's getting the ball. He's getting the touchdowns. In addition to those shootouts, they have games against awful run defenses, the Lions, the Niners, the Cardinals. He's getting the record. I have him at 34. He will break LaDainian Tomlinson's record of 31 from 2006. He will get the record, if for no other reason than they have shown the desire to put up numbers and get guys records. Like, why else is he getting the ball in the fourth quarter on a game you're up 25? They want him putting up crazy numbers. They want the attention. And I don't think it's like a cockiness thing. They like the attention. And why wouldn't you? When you're that good, go get it. Look at the Eagles dancing last year. When you're good, you want the attention on you.
Yeah, I think they have a head coach in McVay who is sensitive to that kind of stuff, where he realizes, hey, we have something special here. We can make history. Let's go for it. And
he's a young guy. He gets today's athlete is
Yeah.
more ego driven than, Bill Belichick doesn't get that.
yeah, so in the future, when you're a guy who's thinking about maybe going to play a couple different places, and you look and you say, hey, McVay lets his guys, get theirs. He lets them put up their stats. He lets them meet their bonuses for hitting different milestones, whatever. That's going to speak a lot, better than some of these other coaches who are just like, no, if we clinched, you're not going to play for the last 3 weeks. Today's athlete doesn't want to deal with that. They don't want to ramp it down for 3 weeks at a time. So I actually have him breaking the record too. I have him at 33. So one less than where Miles has it, but I've got him at 33 touchdowns.
So when I said 38 and you guys scoffed, were you scoffing because?
I mean, 38 is still 5 more than
That's
what
a
I
lot.
have.
Yeah, that's a lot. I just hope, like anything, as long as it's not 0 for the fantasy football championships, because I had a lot of luck in lotteries and I have a lot of Todd Gurley.
Yeah,
and I'm not alone. There's a lot of people who are going to be in their championship because of him. And he gets to play the Cardinals week 16, and I really hope he's still playing.
All right. Which of these surprise division leaders do you think is most likely to actually win the division? One of these really is a surprise at this point. One is probably a 50-50 surprise because I think most people expected Jacksonville. But the Redskins and the Texans, which one do you expect to actually potentially win the division?
I do think Houston has the best shot. And you kind of hit that with very, very, very few people had the Redskins tabbed as division challengers. In the AFC South, how many times this summer did we say any of the 4 teams could win this thing?
Yeah.
So that's possible. Washington is definitely playing great football right now. But personally, and maybe it's a bit of homerism, I can't count out the defending champions who still have 5 divisional games left on the schedule. They completely still control their own destiny. The Texans right now are a game up in the division, but maybe more importantly, within the AFC South, they're 2-1 right now, and all 3 of those division games were on the road. So their 3 remaining divisional games are all home. I like them to hold serve there and go at least 2-1 at home, and I think that's enough to wrap up the AFC South for the Texans.
Yeah, I picked the Texans too. I think that division is more wide open, and I understand the Redskins have the lead right now, but I'm with you, Miles. I'm not ready to give up on Philly. They have 5 games left. They're 1-0 in the division already, so no losses there. You got 5 games left against the division, and I have a feeling that Howie's going to make a move. You're going to get a new running back possibly, or something to spark them and get them going in the right direction.
All right. Well, that brings us to the last order of business. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even pick my team. I'm going with the Texans as well. I'm getting ahead of myself here because I'm excited about still being alive in Survivor this far into the season. Rocco's done. He's checking out.
His night is over.
I'm going with the Texans too. I think that they're not even playing up to their full potential yet. I think they're just going to continue to get better. I expect Watson to play better. I don't know that he's going to, get back to that torrid pace that he was at, but he'll play much better coming up in the next couple of weeks here. All right, Survivor time. Just as a reminder, myself and Miles, so Miles and South are the last 2 goons who are still alive in Survivor through week 8. Miles has picked the Rams, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Bengals, the Texans, and the Colts. He's no longer able to pick any of them. I have used the Jaguars, Rams, Bears, Packers, Saints, Vikings, and Chargers. So I can't use any of those. I'm going to go first this week just because I let Miles go first last week. I'll give him the extra minute to maybe change his mind or mess with his head here a little bit.
No, I'm good.
I'm going with, to me, this is always dangerous when you go with kind of a chalk pick here, but I've got to go with the Patriots against the Bills next week on Monday night, just because the Bills are going to play Derek Anderson, potentially be without Shady McCoy against the Patriots, in prime time. Tom Brady typically tears apart the Bills. I'm going with the chalk there. I'm going to use my Patriots pick right here in week 8.
Well, I'm not going chalk because I used the Patriots week 4, so I'm not able to go that one. Rocco, you might want to take those headphones off again. I'm going to take the Chicago Bears this week as they host.
I can't wait for you to lose this week.
They're going to host the New York Jets. Here's my deal. Chicago at home is 2-1 this year. That loss was this past week where they lost to the New England Patriots because of 2 special teams touchdowns. It took the Pats 2 special teams touchdowns to beat Chicago. And even after that, the Bears were 1 yard short of tying that game on a Hail Mary. So you want to tell me, hey, the Hail Mary's lucky. Well, find me the last team that scored 2 special teams touchdowns back-to-back weeks. So that seems unlikely. I think on top of that, kind of more logistically, the Jets secondary is just too beat up. It's way too beat up to kind of slow down Mitchie garbage time points. He's going to take care of it. Offense isn't playing consistent enough to put against big points against a really tough Chicago defense. Like I said, Bears only lost once at home. The last 2 times the Jets were on the road, they lost to Cleveland and Jacksonville, who are a combined 1-7 since they played the Jets. So not exactly teams that are on fire right now. To me, Chicago, and honestly, I think it's going to be a little bit lopsided.
I will say that Rocco's on mute, which is probably a good thing right now.
Am I allowed to, no, I want to know, am I allowed to be a super big jerk about it if you get knocked out this week?
No, because you lasted as long as my daughter, who's 2.
Yeah, you literally
both won 0 games in this competition.
And like we're talking 1 o'clock time slot.
Yeah. So no, you're not.
No, technically, I didn't lose in the 1 o'clock time slot because my game didn't get over till 8 o'clock at night because of 2 thunderstorm rain delays.
That's true. You probably were the, technically 3rd place at this point. So, yeah, listen, Bears game was appealing. That was like my number 3 option. And then Texans at home on Thursday night, short week, a lot of guys banged up for the Dolphins. I did think about that one as well, but couldn't go that route. So, all right, listen, that's it for this week's edition of the show. Make sure you tune in now every Monday night live, 8:30 on our YouTube channel. We post those links on Facebook, on Twitter, on social media so that you can join us live for the show, be a part of what's going on, get the jump on the next week in fantasy football. Keep up with us, facebook.com/footballgoons, @footballgoons on the Twitter, and of course here on our YouTube channel as well. You're going to want to stay tuned to footballgoons.com all week long as well. Tuesday mornings, the podcast will drop. Wednesday mornings, we will have our Goons, Ghosts, and daily picks for the upcoming week for you. And then on Thursday mornings, we'll have our updated fantasy rankings for you. So all week long, great content coming to you, footballgoons.com. We'll catch you guys next week.